Robot Wars Extreme gave us the Thermidor team accusing women of not belonging on Robot Wars, the Dietor team pulling wires out of Firestorm, and a grudge match over which team of Roboteers were the best singers. To say it was an odd time in the Robot Wars timeline would be an understatement. Still, as silly as it was certainly charming and delivered the goods where it mattered. I recently went over the top 10 best episodes of the series in my ever so humble opinion, and now it's time to give the battles the same treatment. This was a tough task because, as far as battles are concerned, Extreme 1 really does knock it out of the park. Each episode has at least one decent battle, and most episodes had multiple. The series was chock full of memorable moments, and a few firsts also. With battles as good as these, it's easy to forget the cringe factor and enjoy the series from a battle standpoint. And remember, this isn't a definitive list, just my personal opinion, so don't set my house on fire if your favourite battle doesn't get mentioned. I'm Anderson91322, the Robot Wars Guru, and these are my top 10 battles of Robot Wars Extreme. Number 10, HYPNODISC vs Wheelie Big Cheese vs Ming 3. It wouldn't be a top 10 battles video without containing a HYPNODISC massacre somewhere on the list. Being honest, there isn't really much for me to say about this battle that isn't already known. You want to know why HYPNODISC is still highly remembered and loved by fans of the show to this day? Look no further than this battle. Seeing Ming 3 and Wheelie Big Cheese get pulled apart by the two-time grand finalists still holds up today as one of the most violent battles in the show's history and ranks up there as one of the big three HYPNODISC battles, along with its massacres of Robogeddon and Splinter. There is nothing more beautiful than seeing HYPNODISC simply removing one of Ming 3's wheels in one foul swoop. Sure, it wasn't a competitive battle by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a pure spectacle and a true classic that has lived on and still holds up to this day. Number 9, the International Inferno. Being honest, this may as well have just been a War of Independence battle between Panic Attack of the UK and Manta of the USA, because Maximil and Flensburger Power did the equivalent of both fuck and all. At least they lost in entertaining fashion. Seeing Maximil get floored by Manta was jolly good fun, as was seeing it go sailing across the arena. The fact that this is the most Flensburger Power moved in the battle is both sad and funny at the same time. But hey, at least we had Panic Attack and Manta to pick up the slack. These two had good chemistry in the Warzone and gave each other a bloody good brawl to prove it. It was this fight that introduced me to Manta, and it has since become my favourite US Robot Wars competitor. It was a good battle of strategy and control versus power and speed, and in this case the former just came out on top. Even if it did feel a little bit cheap, with Matilda seemingly helping Panic Attack. Can't have those scummy rednecks winning, can we?
Roll Britannia, Britannia rules the waves. Britons never, never, never will be slaves.
Number 8, the ANTWEIGHT Championship. There were 3 different weight classes that got their own respective championships in this series, and of all the 3, the ANTWEIGHT Championship Rumble was by far the best of the lot. The Middleweight Championship essentially saw Typhoon bully a bunch of boxes, and the Featherweight Championship gave us 2 RC cars bumbling around until one of them died. This ANTWEIGHT Championship Rumble, however, gave us an actual fight, and a good one at that. Even today, most ANTWEIGHT battles are simply a test to see which robots last the longest on a small platform, but in this battle we actually saw a proper fight between the 7 machines. Proof that with a decent arena, ANTWEIGHTs can deliver fights as good as the heavies can. The battle also had a little bit of everything, with damage and spectacle being caused by eventual Winner Combat Ant, and driving precision and tactics being utilised by Little Nipper. It even had some comic value, with ANTWEIGHTs flying around and Anti-Bee being swallowed by the floor flipper. The field of robots was also nice and diverse, which is shocking considering that this was the first ever time Robot Wars had an ANTWEIGHT championship. It even had a cluster bot. It's also the battle that introduced us to Craig Danby of Foxic and Slammo fame and welcomed ANTWEIGHT legend Peter Waller to many viewers. Number 7, Firestorm 3 vs Wild Thing. There's a reason why the All-Stars Championship of Extreme 1 was the main competition of the series. Where else can you have dream matches between some of the greatest robots to grace the arena? One of those dream bouts, for me at least, was fulfilled when Firestorm 3 and Wild Thing clashed in their All-Star quarter-final battle. Talk about a back-and-forth brawl between 2 similar yet completely different robots. Each machine got several good attacks in, and it was a pure driving masterpiece as Grainbone and Nick Adams, 2 of the most respected drivers in the sport's history, gave each other a true battle. This KO Firestorm managed to get on Wild Thing is one of my all-time favourites, and I'm annoyed I forgot to mention it in that collab video I did with Jim Jamatic a while ago. This battle was all action from beginning to end and felt like a true battle of the greats. Number 6, RAZER vs Behemoth. Ah yes, the rematch to end all rematches. After RAZER defeated Behemoth in a still highly debated judge's decision to win the first World Championship, the thought of these 2 popular machines grappling in the arena one more time to settle the score had many people foaming at the mouth. Fans were granted their wish when they fought in an All-Stars quarter-final battle that more than delivered. I'd argue it was even better than the original. RAZER had no issue showing the world it could still damage the titanium-clad Behemoth, buckling its scoop out of shape and clawing a gaping hole into its side. But Behemoth were also happy to show the fans that they were no slouches and refused to go down without a fight, miraculously using its ruined scoop to topple over the two-time world champions and control them around the arena. The fight was so intense that the action was still frantic as the clock ticked down, with Behemoth scoring this great flip in the final seconds. RAZER came out the victor, rightly so in my opinion, but this was an absolute banger that gave us viewers exactly what we wanted from these two machines. Number 5. Round 1 of the first Annihilator. Annihilators are always good fun.
Apart from that shit one in Series 7.
And the main reason for this is how insane the opening rounds usually were. 6 robots going absolutely bonkers until one dies or gets voted out is always going to be a spectacle.
Apart from that time it wasn't.
So it's no surprise that the first round fight in arguably the best Annihilator there has ever been is on this list. Just look at the robots here. PUSSYCAT and HYPNODISC are returning grand finalists from Series 4, whilst Thermidor, Splinter and Exterminator are returning semi-finalists. Now that's an all-star Annihilator. I admit it would have been great seeing Wild Thing, another returning semi-finalist, in there as well, but Arnold A was a great underdog that got stuck into the action. Seeing HYPNODISC going flying around like this was eye-opening stuff, and hearing JP shout himself hoarse as his two favourites to win get owned first is incredible. I think this is the best example of a mosh pit in Robot Wars, with all 6 machines punching and kicking until something flops. Oh, and Splinter and Exterminator fighting over HYPNODISC's corpse was good fun too, as was Arnold getting in some shots. Number 4. The second round of the second Annihilator. Yeah, the first Annihilator may have been the better episode as a whole, but I believe the second Annihilator contained the best multi-bot battle of the two. It was a difficult choice, but I chose this one simply because it was the better pure battle. The first Annihilator's opener is great as far as spectacle is concerned, but as a battle, it's all mayhem and no substance. This second round battle, however, was frantic, yes, but also much more even and fluid. All 4 machines got some great screen time and all machines attacked one another in convincing fashion. This is honestly one of the closest battles in the show's history in my opinion, and had it gone the distance I honestly have no clue who the judges would have gone for. Seeing Spirit of Nightmare not only getting the better of Panic Attack several times but landing the KO hit on Steel Avenger is a great example of how there are no true favourites in Annihilators. The damage dealt to Panic Attack via Steel Avenger and Disco Inferno was so severe that they had to pull out of the competition as they couldn't fix it in time. Despite that though, Panic Attack did manage to get some great offense in of its own, nearly pitting Spirit of Nightmare. This was a grueling, brutal and extremely close battle with tons of action. Number 3. Steel Avenger vs Tornado vs King Bee Powerworks. The mayhems of Extreme 1 were almost always a highlight of the episodes they appeared in. The concept of robots having to qualify for an Annihilator was a good one, and I would have liked to have seen them continue this for later Annihilators.
Especially that really bad one that is the spawn of Satan and enjoys drinking weak tea.
And by far the best of them was this one. You guys know me by now, I'm a fan of fast-paced, frantic fights with back and forth action, and that's what this fight gives us in spades. Tornado was obviously given this battle as a way of ensuring they got into the Annihilator, but alas, King Bee of all robots put a stop to that, clanging into them and knocking out their removable link. Best laid plans of mice and men, eh? You'd think that would be the end of the brilliance, but if anything, it's what made this fight so great. The sheer upset of Tornado being KO'd like this fired up the viewers, and Steel Avenger and King Bee didn't disappoint, having an awesome tussle as Tornado was discarded of by the house robots. Seeing the Steel Avenger finally wake up was really great to see, as was seeing King Bee perform the best it had of the entire series. Okay, its wheel broke off, but that was just part of the frantic action. Yeah, they tried to ruin it with forced drama even though this attack by Matilda was perfectly legal, but this battle is still an epic encounter and highly recommended. Number 2. PUSSYCAT vs Arnold A. Terminator. Earlier I mentioned that the second Annihilator of Extreme 1 had the best multi-bot battle of the 2 Annihilators this series had to offer. However, the best battle either episode had to offer overall was always going to be this final. PUSSYCAT was always going to be favoured to do well in this episode. It was a returning runner-up after all, but goddamn did Arnold A turn a lot of heads. Considered by many as a fodder robot simply there to be eliminated early, Arnold A proved it was a worthy fighter and earned its way to the final, but even then everyone assumed it would be an easy task for the cat. Boy were they wrong, as Arnold and PUSSYCAT did the dance of death in what felt like a brutally long clash. You could feel the tension in the arena as both machines stood their ground and gave each other a true classic of a final struggle. What I really love about this battle though is how close of a fight it was between two complete opposites. PUSSYCAT is a long-time veteran with tons of wins under its belt and a deadly saw, whilst Arnold was a second round dropout that certainly looked more frail than it was, yet the fight went the distance in one of the closest battles of the series. Also, both machines were full of personality and imagination, so seeing them give each other a good battering was incredibly good fun. As usual, before I get to number 1, I'd like to list off a few honourable mentions. Thermidor vs Behemoth vs Stinger. This battle saw Thermidor make Robot Wars history as it became the first robot to flip 2 opponents out of the arena in a single battle. The first Uteron Behemoth literally made my jaw drop, it was that impressive. Sadly, despite these moments, the rest of the battle didn't really have much going on. Behemoth vs Stinger. A good battle between 2 robots that severely contrast in design that had an almost perfect ending. Had this tactic been what pitted Stinger, it probably would have made it onto the list, but Stinger limply driving itself in the pit lets it down. Wild Thing vs Arnold A vs Fluffy. Wild Thing and Arnold A had a really good tussle and we saw easily the best floor flip in the show's history. It's just a shame the guys editing the battle decided to focus more on a dead Fluffy and less on the Wild Thing Arnold A scuffle. Tornado's World Championship Melee. With the exception of Yeba Robo, all the machines in this fight actually made a good fist of things, with Panzer Mark II giving Tornado a big run for their money. Seeing Philippa KO Panzer Mark II was a genuine shock and the fight was full of action, but shoddy fast cut editing stopped this one from being as good as it could have been. RAZER vs Gemini. One of RAZER's more entertaining fights, this was a perfect blend of damage and tactics with both machines getting some great attacks in on one another. Unfortunately, this battle was heavily edited and as such missed out important moments due to a floor flipper flip that shouldn't have happened. Number 1, Tornado vs Behemoth. Oh boy, this is a banger. Obviously, I place it number 1 on this list. Who writes this crap? Oh yeah, it's me. Jackass. Where was I? Oh yeah, Tornado vs Behemoth. This battle might just be the perfect example of why the wrestling shtick works so well in the robot combat environment because the story going into this one was rather gripping. Behemoth at this point had dominated its previous 2 challenge belt battles and was being treated as an unbeatable end boss of a machine. Tornado decided to challenge them for the belt, so fans went into this one expecting it to be a good war, but boy, no one expected it to be this good. Tornado had impressed viewers already with its domination of 3 Seconds to Heaven, but this was the battle that truly showed everyone just how much better it was. Tornado upending Behemoth like this and pounding it like a jackhammer was incredible, but Behemoth didn't lie down easy, coming back strongly and nearly getting Tornado over the arena wall. And the final surge from both machines was incredible. You know the term irresistible force versus a movable object? Well, nothing epitomises that phrase quite like the closing moments of this battle. It was tough choosing between this and Pussycat vs Arnold A, but I picked this one simply because of the pace. Whilst Pussycat vs Arnold was a grippingly close encounter, it was more like a stellar game of chess. Each motion and movement was tactical as 2 worn out robots fought to their last wig. Tornado vs Behemoth, however, was more like 2 MMA fighters beating the piss out of each other from bell to bell. And that's why it's number 1 in my book. And that's it for this list and this video. Do you agree with me or do you think I'm an uncleansed armpit? What were your favourite battles of Robot Wars Extreme? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Anderson913, the Robot Wars Guru, and I'll see you next time.